Hi. If you're new here, my name is Drew, and on this channel I attempt to sew vintage style clothing in a modern way. And if that's something that you're into, I hope that you subscribe and stick around. If you're not new here, then welcome back to the sewing room. Today I'm going to show you my process for sewing up the dress that I am wearing, which is a vintage pattern from Butterick, and it is 7049. So let's get into it. The history that I could find on the internet regarding this pattern, it is from 1954. I believe at this time they weren't necessarily printing the dates on all of the patterns, but the internet says it's from 1954. Judging by the cover of this pattern, I thought it was going to be a super easy, quick thing to make, which is what I was looking for because my project for next week is a little involved. It's a collaboration I'm doing with another vintage sewer here on the YouTube. And so for this week, I wanted something that would be quick and easy and just, something that looked good, which it does, but it was not necessarily quick and easy. Once I opened the pattern and seen that it was unprinted, that's when I got a little nervous. So as I'm removing these very old pieces to count them, I got a little bit emotional through this process. Just holding something so old kind of does something to you. And I started thinking about the past and the history of sewing and this pattern and even my own past and history. And as I'm counting the pieces of paper, I look up and there is the paper now in a frame from my baby brother that he wrote to me the morning I graduated from college. And I don't know, the emotion overtook me a little bit and I shed warm tears on this very old paper. I know a lot of people trace these patterns off to preserve their quality and not to disrupt their condition in any way. I choose not to. I touch them, I pin them, and sometimes I mark them. I want my mark to be a part of the history of the pattern, and if I am very lucky, my daughter's daughter will one day hold these patterns and see my mark, and she will think of me and smile. At least that's what I hope. And so I pin the pieces to the fabric and I cut. I'm thinking of when I first told my own mother that I wanted to leave my career and stay home and raise babies and care for a home and a husband and sew. And I think she viewed it as a step back from what her own generation worked so hard for. But I see the feminism in these very feminine undertakings. Sewing at one time was a source of power for women who had very little otherwise. In a space in the past, a sewing machine was a dowry item. It was a way for a woman to make stable money of her own. She could even rent out her sewing machine. I find sewing to be a very independent activity, and to create something from nothing gives you confidence, which gives you power. These are just some of the places my mind goes when sewing. Where do your sewing thoughts take you? I would be happy if you share them with me in the comments. As I transfer these thousands of different size circles or dots or whatever, I am really starting to rethink my decision for this pattern. After all of that, I'm so unhappy with this fabric. It is so thin and flimsy. I just don't know what to think of it, and so I decide to scratch it and go with something else. And so then I have to cut it all out and do all of the markings again. And there's like 1,000 of these because this dress literally has like 15 darts, which for someone who doesn't like darts, this was a lot. Okay, so this is turning out to be harder than I thought, just because at this point I don't know what's happening with all the perforations. I understood that this is a dart. I can see that clearly, but I know that at the waist on each side there are 2 darts, so I'm guessing that's that and that. But why the 2 dots side by side instead of just the one? Like, I don't. Oh, because the dart goes that. Okay, I see it now. The dart goes up. Gotcha. There and there. Okay. Crisis averted. And so then I got out the ruler and I started to literally connect the dots, and I swear I see the little and the Big Dipper. I don't know. There's a lot of dots going on here, and on this black it literally looks like constellation. I made a huge mess with the lines. if I felt like I knew what I was doing. I felt like I was in some of the videos I watch where people are pattern drafting, and I think that's so cool the way they like swish around the ruler and the pencil and just make these really accurate marks, and mine are just nothing like this. So I decided to deal with the interfacing and the pockets. They seemed simple enough, and I wanted to do something that felt like progress instead of confusion. Um, it was a little bit tricky because these instructions give instructions for the facing and the interfacing separately, like not as, if I was using iron on or whatever. And so once I figured that all out, it seemed a little bit easier to understand the instructions. So I stitched the 4 pocket pieces together, right sides together, and then I turned them to the outside. Then I attached the neck edge and the front facing parts. Now I have to go back to the dots, the constellations, and the darts. So many darts. And some of them were stitched so close together, and then some were going up different directions, upside down, like 2 upside down triangles, which I started looking over some of my other vintage patterns last night, and I noticed that I guess this is just a vintage thing because a lot of them have the darts where there's 2 of them up and down. I don't know what to call it. So at this diamond shaped of the darts at the waistline is where I'm instructed to cut it, so I do. And then I pin and stitch all up the darts. For some reason, I don't know if it's just because of the darts, which I don't feel like I'm very good at. This one came out nice, but for some reason, I was just bored with the process of making this dress. I really didn't enjoy it. I don't know if it was because the fabric was black and kind of boring, and I've been working with a lot of prints lately, even though I do feel like you definitely need a little black dress in your closet. I don't know. I just was not feeling this fabric at all. I'm not even sure what kind of fabric it is. If you know, please feel free to leave that in the comments as well. And so then I pinned the pockets in place. All of my darts were so confusing, so I really couldn't tell exactly where the pockets were supposed to be. So what I did was just measure on both sides of the dress to make sure that I was putting them in the same location. It's not necessarily the right location, but they are in the same location. So I top stitched them in place, and they do end up being a little too far back. It works out fine, but they weren't where they were really supposed to be. And I sewed the dress up in the back seam. This dress has no side seams, which is pretty interesting. I guess that's the reason for all of the dart. So this is me just pinning the dress all the way up the back seam.
Hi, Major. Where are you going?
I know.
And then my 2-year-old comes in and tells me goodbye, which is even more interesting. So she didn't actually leave, so that's a plus. But she wants out, as do I. And our day's coming, so just hang tight, everybody. We're almost there. Here I am pinning this neck facing in place, and that was simple enough. It's when I get to the bottom of the dress that it gets a little bit tricky. And so then I dealt with this front facing. Like I said, the facing instructions were super weird. The way the dress comes out a little bit and then goes in, it was 2 separate pieces for the front facing, and they didn't even give you a piece for the bottom of the dress. I actually had to draft it myself, and all of this weirdness happened, but I don't understand why they didn't just extend the facing. I don't know. It was weird. This is when I started just doing things on my own, kind of instinctually, kind of just doing it in a way that made sense to me. So I was able to get it done, but I don't know. So yeah, that's me cutting it out and pinning it in place. It was super weird the way it was extended, and so I just did something weird, and it ended up coming out fine, but it was super weird. See this piece that sticks out? So I just pinned that to the middle. I pinned the facing that I draft to the middle, and then I stitched it down, and I'm gonna flip it over like so. Yeah. And then I did the buttonholes. There was lots of buttons, which I'm getting pretty good at doing now. And this dress is almost complete, and I'm happy that it's almost done. I'm just not necessarily happy with the outcome, but yeah. So I put in all the buttonholes, and then I did the hem, which came out pretty well. I've had a few times where the hem is super wavy, but this time it didn't come out like that, so I was pretty pleased with the hem. Did the hem, and then there was like lots of just little finishing work, tucking in the facings and tacking those down and sewing the buttons on, which I found these really cute gold buttons that I'm super into gold buttons for some reason, but I found these gold buttons and I put them on, and I had to bias bind the sleeves, which bias binding is super tricky for me. I struggle with it a lot, but I was somehow able to figure that out. And overall, I'm pleased with the dress. It's a good dress. I styled it really modern, and I'm going to show you the way that I styled it now. The black for me was just so boring, so I put jeans on with it, which I thought were cute, and my little pumps and matching belt and purse. And I actually wore this out, which made me happy. It was a little chilly today, but I just had to wear it, so I did, and I like it. I hope you like it. If you like this video, like this video. I appreciate you for watching and for being here. Stay tuned for that collaboration that's coming next week, and I'll see you in my next video that is soon and sure to come.